Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to whoever's listening to this presentation. Today we'll do, well, a presentation about King Arthur, the movie from 2004. I'm Ramiro. I will give context about what is happening in this movie, the original context, the three main groups that this movie has or depicts, and the continental situation or historical situation of Europe uh, during the time this movie is set. Okay, let's start by setting time and place, that is a regional context. This movie is set in the British Isles in the latter days of the Roman Empire, more precisely in 467 AD. In this period, we find Great Britain, named Britannia Province, divided in two by a wall named the Hadrian Wall, a wall that began its construction in 122 AD. This wall served as a physical border between the Romano Britons and the Picts, today Scotland. Uh, these two group of people were at constant war with each other ever since Romans had conquered the southern part of the British Isles. Another fact to point out is the incursions that the Saxons, Danish Vikings, have started during this century to conquer this region. As I said before, there were three different sites or three different groups uh, depicted in this movie. The first were the Romano Britons, uh, people who had been a subject of the Western Roman Empire, uh, who had who were located in the southern part of, well, in the conquered region of the British Isles. Uh, then you have the Picts, who were in the northern part, today Scotland, a group of Celtic tribes that had been there, who were conquered first by the Romans a few centuries ago. And lastly, we have the Saxons, a group of Danish Vikings who began, again, they began incursions with the motive of conquer the region in this century. Okay, that's for regional context. Now for a general situation of Europe in that period. At a continental level, we find ourselves again on the last days of the Western Roman Empire, an empire that had been divided a century before due to a civil war and an economical, political, and military crisis that made the Roman Empire split itself into two parts to prevent it from completely falling apart in the 4th century. This happens in the 5th. This was a century before. However, this didn't take into consideration the fact that the empire had been on constant war with neighboring tribes from all parts of Europe, and the Britannia province, the Britannia region, was no different from this. Uh, as such, by the 5th century, a century later, Romans had decided to completely abandon the region due to a lack of money and personnel to maintain his authority and influence over the British Isles.
At that century, the 5th century, there were two religions in conflict when the movie took place. Christianity against paganism, Christians against pagans. Romans were Christians. They were people who believed in God, the Holy Spirit, and they obeyed the church. And all those people who didn't believe in God and didn't obey the church were considered as pagans. as in the case of Picts and the Saxons. The Picts, famously known as Celts and historically known as Picts, in the movie appeared as the Woods, and the Picts were people who lived in nature, where they were naturalists, and their gods belonged from nature as rivers, mountains, animals, trees, and so on. And the name the Picts came from the notion that when they fought, they had a particular costume that to paint their faces and their bodies for the fight. And for that reason they were called the Picts. As in this picture, the woman had her body painted as blue with different forms and different tattoos that represented different things. And in the other hand, we known there were the known Vikings, Danish Vikings, that were the Saxons, who believed in a lot of different gods as the Picts, and it was a polytheistic kind of belief. It means that they don't have only one God, as in the case of Christians that was God. They had lots of different gods for different things, as in the case of Guden, Thor, god of thunder, Thor, god of war, Frigg, and all of those Nordic gods coming from the Nordic mythology. All those people who didn't believe in this omnipresent figure represented by God for Christians, they were considered as pagans, and they were persecuted and discriminated by these people who were Christians, by the church. And in the 4th century there were a famous decree called Cunctus Populus that basically consisted into persecute and to discriminate these people that didn't believe in God, that practiced another religion, another faith that was different from Christianity.
Well, let's move on to the main characters of one of the most popular stories of medieval Britain. Well, this is the great King Arthur. He's a legendary British king who appears in a series of stories and medieval romances as the leader of a knightly fellowship called the Round Table, the famous Round Table. We all meet him as the guy who pulled the sword off the stone, becoming in this way the born king of all England. He is a heroic general and a Christian warrior. He and his knights carry out acts of chivalry such as rescuing damsels in distress and fought against strange beasts. That's why people love Arthur. All the people love Arthur, the great king, right? The great king of England. This is Sir Lancelot, or also called Sir Lancelot du Lac, that is Lancelot of the Lake in English. He was the first knight of the Round Table, the model of noble behavior and the good friend of the king. He never failed in gentleness, courtesy, or courage. In addition to his courage and prowess on the battlefield, Lancelot was also a knight who was consistently serving others, thus giving him a good name and favor among most circles. His only problem, a big problem, was to fall in love with Queen Guinevere, that is the Arthur's wife. An event that will destroy Arthur's kingdom, but this is another story. And the last main character is Guinevere, the legendary, beautiful, and noble queen who appears as a great warrior on the movie. She was the wife of King Arthur, but how I said before, her life took a tragic turn when she fell in love with Lancelot. And that's all. They were the three main characters in our movie.
Values. The values that predominate were more the type of behaviors that people adopted, and as values we understand were strength, will, perseverance, self improvement, and sense of belonging. Question. They were crowns adorned with very valuable stones, long tunics, with braid embroidery that they adjusted with a belt and over it. They were finely woven cloaks made of silk manufactured people that they combined with luxurious articles of gold, silver, and ivory. Lifestyle. People's lifestyle were strongly conditioned by nature. Many people permanent contact with the environment around them, so that nature were part of their daily life.
The word barbarian is an expression that comes from the Greek and means the one who babbles. The ancient Greeks used the term to refer to foreign people who didn't speak Greek or Latin and whose foreign language sounded like an incomprehensible babble to the earth. Furthermore, Hadrian's Wall separated them from the empire. This marked the limit between Roman Britain and the peoples of the north. The Roman Empire was divided into two, Eastern and Western. The capital of the Western Empire was Rome, and Constantinople was the capital of the Eastern Empire.